Okay, everyone, and welcome to the weekend edition of the market wrap up with myself, Michael Nauss from Statsedgetrading.com. As always, make sure you go to Statsedgetrading.com, sign up for the email list there so I can get these videos to you via email. And also, there's a whole bunch of added content to the newsletter, all the screenshots, the ability to copy and paste my watch list every day into trade ideas. If you don't have trade ideas, give it a shot. Use StatsEdge for 15% off checkout. So during the week, short videos about what's going on at any given moment in the market. On the weekend, long videos talking more about overall trend, weekly charts, that type of thing. So I hope you're ready because we got a lot of charts. So crank this up on 2x speed if you need to. But this is the work that I do every night. That's the way I started these videos and I started the email. It's essentially the work that I do every night. I used to write these little Google Docs of this is what you want to do tomorrow. Now I just do it publicly. So the amount of work that goes on the weekend, especially a weekend that is the end of the quarter, end of the month, end of the week. So there's a lot of BS going on when it came to options and all that kind of stuff. So we'll go through all that. We're going to start here with Bitcoin, and we're going to start on the monthly chart, just showing that we are now 6 months in a row just stuck in this zone, just hard stuck between this high right here and this low right there. That's all there is to it. So when you're hard stuck in a zone like that, you just have to chill out. And then not only that, we're now 6 weeks in a row in a tighter range. So 6 months in a wide range, 6 weeks in a tighter range. For me, you just, again, either you zoom in if you really, really trade crypto, and that's the only thing that you're looking at. You zoom right in really, really closely, or you just sidestep it entirely. Those are your two options. It's not rocket science. You don't want to just buy or sell in this time frame because there's nothing going on in this time frame. So you can change time frames. You could play support and resistance and buy every time it comes down and sell every time it comes up if the risk management works for you with that. However, just note that we're range bound until anything happens one way or the other. We're range bound. That's just the way it is. So now we go to pound yen. And pound yen's just pulling back now into this zone where it bounced before. This zone is interesting to me just to see if we get a bounce the way we have here in Aussie yen, where we've bounced for a couple weeks. So we have some relative weakness in pound yen and a nice little bounce here in Aussie yen. So if this bounce fails in Aussie yen, then it'll be interesting to see if that also rolls over a pound yen, we break the support and start to move lower. And then we can look somewhat in this area right here to see if we're going to come back to this breakout and then bounce from there. The dollar pairs are interesting. A lot of them on the weekly chart look the same. So let's actually just do euro dollar. And I'm interested on a shorter term time frame this week in euro dollar. And the reason for that is we have the anchored VWAP from this low, which is also lines up with this support zone that we had in March. And we're down like 11 weeks into this support. So am I saying, hey, the euro is going to reverse and it's up from here? Absolutely not. I have no idea. The point is that I think that this zone is a zone that we could at least get a little bit of a relief bounce. The idea essentially being if you are short from up here, we've come all the way down 11 weeks in a row, and we put in this topping tail last week, and we're at this area of support, then maybe a person would just go, okay, I'm going to cover some, I'm going to take some off the table. That's the kind of thing that technical analysis is used for, is to put ourselves in the seats of both sides of the market. On the euro, I see maybe some profit taking coming in, maybe a bunch of people like me saying, okay, it's a bit too much. I have a level to play off of now. I'm not just buying a falling knife. I'm going to look on a shorter term time frame, which I promised people that were in the email list that, reply. It's just done with Substack. So you're basically just subscribing to my Substack. You can comment there. There's a whole community on Substack building, which is great. Basically talking about what do I mean when I talk about that? Well, just like on the longer term chart, when I'm doing my support and resistance and anchored VWAP, I just do the same thing on the shorter term chart. So if we take this low, this significant low right here, and we draw an anchored VWAP to it, you can see not only the anchored VWAP from that way far back low is here, but the one from this recent low is here, and we've just broken that and then pulled back into it. So I'm looking for some consolidation around here. Call it, 1.055, give or take. This is the zone I'm looking for. So if we start to break out of this zone, that's where I'm going to look to get involved in this uptrend. My stop goes below this area, and then we see what happens. We take half of the position off when we're at a 1R or 2R, and then we see what happens. Can we kind of get back up into this zone? Do we bump our heads along the way here? I don't know, but any sort of a push up, that's what I'm interested in. So that's how all of my trading is done. When I talk about these things from a long-term point of view, then I zoom into a little bit of a shorter-term point of view and then look for a zone to play off of. Just a way to minimize my risk. Now, all of the dollar crosses look like this. If we go into, say, pound dollar, it's the same thing. Right to the anchored VWAP from this low, roughly lines up with a zone right here, some relative strength when it comes to pound here. Now, if we go into dollar franc, opposite, right? This is just dollar franc as opposed to euro dollar. Looks like the opposite. So it makes sense that if we go to the Dixie I think is like 70% euro, I think. And it makes sense, right? That we're bouncing here now. A little bit shot over this level, but we are right near, I can draw it out, we are right near that anchored VWAP. Not drawing for some reason, but believe me, we are right near that anchored VWAP from this high right here. The only other currencies I'm going to look at, something that I've added and I've watched based off of a conversation I had with a viewer on Substack. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, sign up for that Substack. Essentially just looking at Aussie CAD. And the reason that this was an interesting pair for this person to look at, and it makes sense to me, is that Aussie dollar and Canadian dollar are both petrocurrencies. So it means that they move with the dollar or the price of oil. They move with oil up. You're going to get good for the economy, bad for the economy. So comparing Aussie to CAD basically negates that that dollar fluctuate or that oil fluctuation, and you can play the currencies more naturally. So what was interesting to me is we had this massive zone here on the weekly where we bounced last time. We undercut that and ran a whole bunch of stops, I imagine, down here, and then closed the week positive. So the same thing on this one, I'm going to be watching from the long side in this security right here. Last but not least, before we get into stocks, we are going to take a look at gold. We're going to go right here. You can see gold dramatic breakdown. We were looking at this AVWAP pinch, keep saying it has to go somewhere. I was saying I have to kind of assume or hope that it's going to go in the direction of the underlying trend. Didn't, just reversed entirely. Now any kind of a bounce that I see here on gold, I'm looking for this zone right here to see if we can get a bounce into that zone and then a reversal. That will be something I watched short, but it probably won't be for another couple weeks. Interesting that the silver right here is actually holding up a little better than gold. We'll see what that means coming into the next couple weeks when we've got to watch that a little bit closely. Now into equities. We're going to start looking at equities now. We're going to start with the S&P 500 and kind of the granddaddy of all these things. And note that this zone that I highlighted last week is still, if we kind of draw it like this, is still in play. So we undercut this a little bit, but then we put in a hammer candle after that. So showing that there was some buying coming into the end of that week. Everyone remembers, what was it, Wednesday, where we just flushed and then bounced. So very interesting that we held on to this zone and we put this bottoming candle right here. Also, this move is roughly the same length as this move. That's just more of a, for people who study kind of harmonics and stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I did see an interesting presentation when I was in Vegas. Now, the anchored VWAP from the March low puts us right at that zone. We undercut that a little bit and we closed above it. So we have the anchored VWAP that we've been watching for a while. We also have that prior high that we've been watching for a while. Makes me think the 200-day moving average, I think, is right below as well. It makes me think that if there was any dip buyers coming in, this would be a point in which they may do it. So I wouldn't be shocked. If I'm expecting to see dollar weakness next week, I wouldn't be shocked to see equity strength. Now, if any of those change, then it just moves on. So I want to talk about basically quickly why I do these things. And it's basically just to prepare what I'm thinking going into the next week. This could all change on Monday. I could sit down at my desk and the dollar could be ripping and stocks could be gapping down, and that kind of washes it. But when that happens, I know that I can't trade in that moment. The time is to step back and build a plan. So the reason I started doing this video, this YouTube, and the email list and all of this is because I'm doing this work every night anyway. And I've had a couple friends saying, hey, when I was learning to trade, saying you should either write this down, journal it. I hate journaling. So this is kind of my journal. This is me just blasting out my thoughts on the market. And I would probably sit here and record these videos anyway. So some people seem to like to watch them. So I just put them out there in the ether, right? So these are all the things that I'm thinking through. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? We could just rip or we could tank. I would just have to adapt to that when and if it happens. So Jets is another one that's kind of interesting here. This is, Delta, America, all of this. Interesting zone right here we are back to, and a big significant sell-off to get to that zone. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a little bit of a bounce here in the Jets ETF. That is it for the overall market. The reason for that, I went through my whole 100 ETFs like I always do. Nothing really stood out dramatically to me. It was all kind of looking the same. It all sold off with the market and it all bounced with the market. So nothing for me to do. Within the actual ETFs, there's nothing for me to really look at and there's nothing for me to do. Just means that I need to understand that everything is following the overall market right now. So now we're going to go and talk to the trades that I'm interested in going into next week. I need to make sure that the market is kind of corresponding with these trades, or at least they're moving diametrically opposed, right? I need to understand that the market right now is ruling everything, which happens. When the market is selling, everybody's super focused on the market. And if the market sells, they just dump everything. The baby out with the bathwater comes into mind as a saying. When the market is rallying, that's when you can kind of pick things a little bit more. So everything I have on watch here, obviously market depending. If we roll over, then it's end of days, we can move on. And if it rockets, then I'm going to want to be owning a lot of these things. So I'm only going to cover, again, the new things that I'm added to the list, because this is kind of a running tally of things that happen every day. And then we'll put this one right here. So we have this AVAV. It's an interesting ticker. Coming back to this $110 mark where it bounced off of before. That's also the anchored view app from this low right here, sitting right at this 110. You can see on Thursday, we actually undercut 110 and then rallied. And then we have all of these topping tails that I see above this area. So what I'm looking for is finally a close above these topping tails, just showing me that topping tails just basically mean we rally to the beginning of the day and then we get smashed down. Then we rally at the beginning of the day and we get smashed down over and over and over and over again. So my idea is just let's do the opposite of that, where if we rally and we close, then that means maybe whatever institution or traders keeps pushing this down at the end of the day, maybe they're gone. That will give us a snapback, maybe to 120 or something like that. We have MPC. So MPC is a oil and gas company. We had a little bit of a pullback in energy this week, still looking really strong to me. So with MPC, we have this zone right in here. We pulling back to that breakout area. Also the anchored view app from this swing low, which is right below this gap right here. A lot of things saying, hey, if we bounce from here, this is a level to watch. LHX. This is the only way that I actually bottom pick when I'm looking for a change in trend. This is something that I very much like. You basically look for something that's been selling off. You look for it to bounce, and then you look for it to pull back into the anchored view app from that bounce. If it finds support there, it's a big if, then you look for a bounce off of that level. Dell has just been doing amazingly since since its gap. So amazing push up from Dell since its gap right here. Gaps up, pulls back, holds this anchored VWAP. If we can get back over $70 a share, I may buy Dell. Never thought I'd be buying a big company, big old company. We're not doing anything like this, but big gap on Dell. So might be a nice little continuation from that gap if we get going. SPHR, I think this is the sphere in Vegas that I actually saw. It was a very interesting thing. Anchored VWAP pinch. So you take the anchored VWAP from this significant high and this significant low, and we're trading between those. You can see how we're getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So this thing breaks out. It's got a 9% short float on this. It's a pretty speculative growth thing. They're building a giant orb. It's nothing wild, nothing established for a period of time. But if we end up breaking out of that, that's an interesting look that I have here on this name. So that's it, guys. We are 15 minutes in, so it's not as long as I thought, but we went through a whole lot of charts. Now, thank you all. If you're getting to this point and you haven't signed up to the email list, go sign up to the email list and give me feedback, because that email is about to change a little bit. I'm using a little bit of AI to help me out with the writing of it and see if it's something that you guys are interested in. All right, guys, have a good weekend. Get away from the screens. Talk to you next week.